Malaysia. 1, 2, 3.
Malaysia boleh! Merdeka! 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 Merdeka!
双子塔，不管飞到哪里，都一直想着它。我最爱的马来西亚，就像河一般，看它像爸爸，快乐的歌谣不曾停下。开在土窑，红灯笼高挂，因为不同才有最美的火花。
1957 bulan 8 kita merdeka. Dari Perlis, Kota Kinabalu, rakyat bersatu dan maju. Bumi bertuah, hasil melimpah, siapa rajin hidup mewah. Saya anak Malaysia, saya anak Malaysia, saya anak Malaysia, saya anak Malaysia.
Melayu, Cina, Iban, India, Kadazan, Portugis pun ada. Semua kaya dengan budaya, di bawah kibaran satu bendera.
Saya anak Malaysia, saya anak Malaysia, saya anak Malaysia, saya anak Malaysia.
Hujan emas di negeri orang, hujan batu di negeri kita. Walaupun cantik negeri orang, tentunya Malaysia cantik lagi. Melayu, Cina, Iban, India, Kadazan, Portugis pun ada. Semua kaya dengan budaya, di bawah kibaran satu bendera. Saya anak Malaysia, 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 saya anak Malaysia.
Demi tanah yang bertuah, taman cinta merdeka, kasih di hatiku ini untukmu tanah pertiwi. Dari utara selatan, juga timur ke barat, turut gagah sama-sama.
What's up anak Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur ibu kota, Selangor naik kapal, terbang pergi antara bangsa, Pulau Pinang jam nasi kandar, buku sejarah puisi Melaka, lebuh raya dari Kedah, terus sampai Johor tengok bola. Hands up Malaysian, put your hands up, we're fighting never give up, let's break the darkness one by one. So stand up, everybody come on stand up, keep on going, we won't stop, show me the power, heat up, yeah.
Hi, good evening everyone. We'll be starting shortly. Can I ask for those of you who are behind to move forward and to fill up the seats in front? Thank you.
Happy birthday, Malaysia! 1, 2, 3.
Malaysia boleh! Merdeka! 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 Merdeka!
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our forum, Sejahtera Malaysia conversations on matters that concern us. I am Rachel, your MC for this evening. Firstly, I would like to invite Reverend Father Gerard Teraviam, parish priest of the Church of the Divine Mercy, to say a few words.
And it will be very few. The most important thing is to say thank you for coming, and thank you to our distinguished speakers for coming. I'd like to also thank the Archbishop of Kuala Lumpur, Archbishop Julian Liao, also for his presence here among us. And for the rest of you, thank you for being here, and please enjoy the evening. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Father. Now, just to give you some background on how this forum came about. Last October, CDM launched Consecration Malaysia. We pledged to say the rosary for our beloved country for 1 whole year. That, my friends, concluded last night with rosary and mass. But it does not end here. As Christians, praying is always paired with a call to action. Hence, this forum. Friends, we are living in exciting times. For the first time in our lives as a voter, we feel that our vote counted. We feel that we played a part in appointing the new government. As such, we want to know in this Malaysia Baharu how we can play an effective role in bringing about change. What is our mission in these times of change? And this is why you have come here this evening. You want to be informed, you want to learn from our panelists, and you want to know what direction policies, reforms, and strategies are heading towards. With that, I would like to invite and welcome our panelists and moderator to take their seat on the stage. Thank you. Let me introduce our panelists to you. On my right is human rights advocate Cynthia Gabriel. She's the director of Center to Combat Chronism and Corruption. She has spent most of her professional life in the field of advancing and promoting human rights, good governance, and democratic freedoms. Ms. Gabriel has also worked on UN contractual research work in the area of migrant and refugee research and their vulnerabilities towards HIV and AIDS. Next to Ms. Grace is Dr. Dionysius Sharma. Perhaps he needs no introduction. He is the chairman of the Malaysian Wildlife Conservation Foundation and is also involved in 4 other foundations. Prior to this, Dr. Dionysius spent close to 29 years at WWF Malaysia. Next, we have Datin Noor Azimah Abdul Rahim, the chairperson of PAGE, Parents Action Group for Education Malaysia. She is also a member of the National Education Advisory Council for the 2018-2020 session. This council was formed to advise the education minister and empower the country's education system. Next is businessman and author and blogger Anas Zubedi, managing director and founder of Zubedi Malaysia Sendirian Berhad. Encik Anas' thoughts as a moderate advocate is shared on his blog, in newspaper articles, as well as the numerous books he has authored and published. Among them, The Quran and I, and The Middle Path, an alternative to the partisan madness. Our moderator for the evening, Reverend Father Clarence Das. He is the director of the Catholic Research Center and the editor-in-chief of the Catholic Asian News, or CAN News. We are still missing one more panelist. She's on her way. That will be YB Berhormat Puan Kasturi Rani Pato. I will introduce her when she arrives. So before I hand the mic over to Father Clarence, this is how our program will proceed this evening. Father Clarence will start the conversation with our panelists. If you have questions for our panelists, you can WhatsApp them to this number on the screen here, and Father will receive it on his device. You can also ask your questions from the floor using the microphone. Please keep your questions precise and clear. Remember to state your name and who your question is directed to. Last but not least, for those of you who are here for the first time, our washrooms are located along the corridor behind the stage. You may access them using the doors on my right and the door on my left. That is all from me. Thank you, Father.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Good evening, everyone. First and foremost, thank you very much to the team here in the Church of Divine Mercy for organizing this conversation. This is quite different from what many of us are quite used to. Probably, we are used to hearing people with PowerPoint presentations, talks given. But this evening, literally, it's a conversation. Yeah? It's a conversation. The first level would be a conversation here on stage, and the second part would be a conversation with the audience that is here. I would like to take this opportunity at the outset to thank the panelists for accepting to be part of this forum. I know it's never easy to be on a public forum. I've been on a few. It's always a risk when you come and the organizers don't give you a clear agenda as to what they're going to ask you or what the audience is going to post before you. But I want to put you at ease this evening. At least let me try the first half of it. I am not in any way going to be like BBC Hard Talk. And neither am I even going to attempt Al Jazeera's 101 East. I don't want anyone walking out of here angry tonight. Right? So at least that is some consolation. Okay? The general direction of this forum here this evening is, as I said, is to have a conversation. And in that process, to be able to get some clarity to this new Malaysia that many people are talking about. It's coming up to now 6 months, almost 6 months since our GE14. And I think that the euphoria of a new government is slowly sinking in. The dust is settling down. And people are beginning to ask hard questions. People are expecting a lot, and sometimes there's a lack of direction, a lack of clarity, so that makes a lot of people not very at ease. Okay, YB Kasturi Pato is here, so we would welcome her first. So maybe... Don't worry, we know that new YBs are working very hard, so we are very forgiving.
Yes, I'd like to say Yang Berhormat Puan Kasturi Rani Pato has been the Member of Parliament for Batu Kawan in Penang since 2013. She's the daughter of the late P. Pato Perumal, a former senior DAP politician and Member of Parliament.
Well, I guess you know all those on the panel, so then no need to reintroduce them. Well, as I've been saying, because of this lack of clarity, there's kind of this uneasy feeling also among the general public as to, we have put in this new government, and where are they taking us? So this is part of the conversation that we would like to have. And we're very privileged to have all of you. You all have been championing different causes for a better Malaysia. And in that process, you have been involved in many discussions, I'm sure, with the previous government and also probably a lot more with the new government here. And you probably have a lot of insights to share with us this evening, more than what we have access to. Well, we have quite a bit of information, but sometimes it's, you don't know what is genuine, what is fake news. We were talking over kind of a small meal earlier, the habit of forwarding messages. We all keep forwarding one to the other, and it comes to a point where you really don't know who to believe and who to believe and who not to believe. So hopefully this evening, we have 5 members of our panelists, and the conversation that we are going to take is quite focused. I'm sure, they don't have all the answers that you are probably looking and, waiting to ask them, but at least this conversation can help us, the ordinary Malaysians, to see how we can make a difference also. And I think that's the most important thing, that we have done our part on that night of May 9th to vote, and we have a new government. And I believe it doesn't stop there, that there must be something more than just going out to vote. And I think part of this conversation is also to see the directions that we are headed and what part or what active part we can also do. Because, it's very easy to be an armchair critic. You can sit, in your sofa. Now with the mobile phone, you can be a critic anywhere. You can just keep texting all kinds of things. But there's also a kind of action that is required. So that's part of our conversation this evening. And so the first part, for about 40 minutes, we'll have a conversation here, and then we have also an opportunity for you to engage in a conversation with them. So let me just start off with some general questions and not, put a revolver at your head straight away and you what things the government is doing. Many of us will remember, the night of May 9th. You probably remember where you were, what you were doing, like many other important events. Well, unfortunately, I wasn't in the country on May 9th. Yes, I wasn't. I was in another country, but morning and walked into the presentation, still pumped up with adrenaline in my body. So I think, a lot of us remember that day. And one of the things I said to myself is that, and I told this to a friend, I said, I never thought I would live to see this day. I don't know whether you felt that way. 61 years of one particular type of governance we have had. And I remember, what went through your mind when you started seeing, the results coming in and a new government is about to be formed? What were your sentiments? What were your thoughts that night? Anyone can start, The microphone is right before you. Just feel free to jump in. This is a conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Father. So good evening, everyone. So I live in Sejahtera Alam, and the constituents in the area, we went to this Sekolah Tamil Ladang Hammock to cast our votes. We stood there in the blazing sun in the quadrangle, the elderly, the young, all the voters, and I just felt very sorry for the elderly because it was just horribly exposed to the harsh sun. But the conversations that were happening as we queued up was fantastic. The conversations that were already starting, people didn't know the results, but the kinds of things they were saying was fantastic. There was an air of change, a desire for change, a wanting to see something different. And so we cast our votes. And then when it became apparent that something hanky-panky was going to happen, and you may have seen this in social media, we rounded up ourselves around the school and prevented any car from going in or any car from going out, because we got wind that something fishy was going to happen. And of course, I don't advocate anything nasty, but the police came to manage us, to ask us all to keep quiet and pacify us. And eventually, when they came out to tell us that the results was, votes were calculated, we dispersed, right? But we stayed up all night, and personally, I had a very mixed feelings. See, I was confused because on the one hand, I wanted change, but on the other hand, the very man that led that change, the process at least, our dear Tun Mahathir, never had a track record, a good record on the environment. So it was a bit of a dilemma. In my mind, you want change, or then, oh, this guy is going back to the same guy, and I know his track record. So there was a bit of confusion in my head, at least. But I think what unfolded is something very different. But at least at that point in time, I knew that our work was going to start all over again to educate him and his new government. So that was the sense when we knew the results. I said, oh dear, it's like work all over again.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Just checking that you're still with us. Okay, well, for me, it was really unbelievable, of course. But it was also, for someone like me who's been like at the front line, working to raise the issues of good governance, corruption, human rights violations for many years, the results that came in were like monumental. It was, and I was looking with so many friends at the information that was coming in. Johor came in first before they froze the rest of it. And then you would see people like Nur Jazlan losing to an unknown. Nur Jazlan was the Deputy Home Minister who was really quite horrifying in the lead up to the general election. And so many big names actually dropping off the list. And then it became possible that, yeah, that big change could actually happen. So it was like one seat after another, and then they just stopped releasing the information from 10 p.m. onwards. And then we knew. And then everyone gathered at the hotel, the big hotel, what's it called? Sheraton in Petaling Jaya. So we all gathered, and that air of change that you were talking about was incredible. And people were like, finally, Cynthia, when you go to the immigration, when you're leaving to go somewhere, you don't have to worry that you're going to be blocked from leaving the country. So that hostility that the government had for many civil society actors, opposition politicians and all, was probably temporarily halted, and we knew that there was a new Malaysia that we had ushered in together. And then very special, because I think the one thing I was very proud, really, in the lead up to the elections was how strong the Catholic Church actually was in its messages, in the ceramah, the forums that were held in the church. There was no mincing words about how corrupt the government was, about how we needed to actually stand up, make our votes count, and talk a lot about the redelineation, the voting process, and all that. So I think we deserve to give ourselves a round of applause, because I'm saying this because we, in many ways, led the change. And there were many people who actually went out of the way to different constituencies to talk. I'm sure Kasturi also went around the country to make that message heard. And so that change agents, I believe, were very instrumental. So it's not about Mahathir leading the change. I mean, of course, he had an effect on the rural Malays and all that, but it was all of us that actually put race, religion on the back burner for once to actually make that change happen. So it was unbelievable. Just one more thing, that a day or two after that, if you don't watch the news, you'd probably be lost, because every now and then there would be an announcement of this committee being formed, a council of elders being formed, this one is going to happen, that one's going to happen, and all that. So feeling very nervous about what it would be like. And I remember on the 10th of May, we didn't have a government until very late that night, because there was all that politics with the palace and everything else. So the excitement actually didn't just happen on the 9th of May, but I think the preceding weeks and months.
I'll go, okay. Thank you, Father. Good evening, everyone. I apologize for coming late. Traffic was a nightmare. So on, like what everyone has been saying, the 9th of May was, for us, it was crazy in the sense that all of us were at the counting center. Like for me in Batu Kawan, I was at the counting center in Bukit Minyak. And our boys were so excited and at the same time really, really high, you know, adrenaline all high. Everybody's like, you know, in case any unmarked cars are coming in with boxes or going out, even though the Borang 14 was in, they stopped cars and kicked cars and almost broke side mirrors, and the OCPD was unhappy, and I was almost like, I didn't know whether I was going to cry or laugh. But at the end of the day, we told the Election Commission, you cannot blame the Malaysian public for being so paranoid about how elections have been run. You have a lousy track record, I told them. But anyway, what happened in Penang was that as it was 10:40, 10:45, 11, we started getting messages asking us to immediately leave the counting centers and go over to the Penang International Airport. And there was a plane waiting for us to fly us to KL. And we were like, why, you know? At that time, no one knew if we were going to change or not, what was going to happen. Would it be a hung government? Would we win with just a slim majority? Would there be crossovers? You know, all these questions running through my mind. Needless to say, in your sweaty baju, which you've been wearing from morning till night, we all just jumped into the first car that said, I will drive you to the airport, and that's what happened. So I did Bukit Minyak to Penang International Airport in 18 minutes. If you're from Penang, you will know it's really a drive, and I had a great driver that night. And plenty of prayers, I'm sure. So we reached the airport, and other MPs were there, and then we were just bundled off. We arrived in KLIA2, and Tony Fernandes is standing there welcoming us. And I'm like, were you not sitting with somebody a few days ago? It was hilarious. I almost had to pinch Ram Karpal, who was next to me, like, Ram. Like, it was 3 a.m., and I was like, is that Tony Fernandes, or are my eyes playing tricks on me? And he's just smiling and like, welcome everyone, come, you know, I hope the flight was good. And we were like, what's going on here? So we were bundled off to Sheraton Hotel. No one knew exactly what was happening. Lim Kit Siang was there, Lim Guan Eng was there, Mat Sabu came after that, and we were like, this is really happening, you know? I mean, did the government really change? And the airport was quiet, and there were military personnel around, and it was just like in the movies, you know? And like everyone waiting with bated breath, we only heard about it at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5, and then somewhere just before sunrise, we had one last meeting just before 7 a.m. To find out how did we do in different states. And that, you know, the Malaysian public had come, you know, with guns a-blazing and changed and threw this regime out for a new Malaysia. And honestly, it was just, you know, in the midst of tears, and you're not sure, and is it really true? Can something happen tomorrow? Would they call for a curfew? After all, we still have very, very draconian laws like the National Security Council, which could be used by the Prime Minister. So, you know, so many questions, but I prayed a lot, and there were so many people sending messages, even on social media, to say, the 10th of May, the air it was fresher, the sun was brighter, and, you know, there was all these young women texting me, telling when they look at their daughters, they had tears in their eyes because they knew that it was going to be a better country for them, even if they didn't benefit so much from it. My sister was one, you know, and she said every time she looked at, you know, the two small ones, and she said, Akka, I really have tears in my eyes, you know. The girls are going to get a better country, a better government, and a better future, and it was really surreal. So at the end of the day, the heroes were the Malaysian people who came quietly. It was different from 2013. 2013, with Pakatan Rakyat was like, oh, we are so going to change government. And, you know, even before the results were out, people were like, oh, we've changed. And, you know, the whole euphoric atmosphere. But 2018 was just a silent crowd, you know. Everybody just went quietly and then just voted and came back and voted for change. Yeah, so thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Anas,
I had an opposite reaction because I'm one of those 2 years before the election consistently say that Barisan will lose. I was the odd one out among my friends, both my friends from Pakatan and also my friends from Barisan. And I was consistently saying the nearer it is to the election day, the more I felt that Barisan will go down. In fact, the one day before the election, a friend of mine from PMO actually told me that they will win 2/3 majority. I told her, you are nuts, you're going to buy me banana leaf rice, you know, after the election. Yeah, so in other words, I was rather sure that Barisan will lose. my fear that night, you're right, I didn't sleep the whole night, is whether would there be a change of government without any blood. That was I couldn't sleep. I was more worried about it. And to thank you, God, and we Malaysians. And also we have to say thank you to people who's currently in the opposition. They decided to let go of the power. Okay, they hold back for about one day. They tried to play some tricks here and there. But I think it was very lucky for us because they decided to relinquish power. And to me, that was the main concern. Will there be a problem of they holding back? Will the army, take things into their own hands? Because our country has not been disturbed by military since before, our kemerdekaan. So those are my fears. My fear was more that, would there be a problem in the transition? But, that you guys will win was my, I was a businessman during that time. We feared to write anything. So we didn't write, but one or two, bloggers carried my article without my name there. Yeah. But the thing is, we should be thankful, not just to Pakatan Harapan, but also Barisan Nasional for letting go the power. And that is something we all should also tell them thank you, so that they feel that we are not completely saying that they are useless. Yeah? Although there are a lot of things I think they did wrong, that one thing they did right was they did not do stupid things like that. And our country became probably one of the best examples in the world that we can change government after 61 years without a single drop of blood. And to me, that is the most proudest part of being a Malaysian today. I'm going overseas next week, and I can walk tall again. It used to be when you go overseas, you don't want to say you're from Malaysia. Today you can go to Singapore and you're from Malaysia, they will give you a tabet, So that's the part I think we should be very happy about.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. When Page was formed 10 years ago, it is really 10 years old now. I remember, we were set up because we wanted to try to save the teaching of science and maths in English. And we went to see Tun Mahathir to get his blessings. And he said, and I asked him, if you were to be PM again, this was 10 years ago, what would you do different? And he said to me, I would do everything different. So maybe he's a changed man. I think we should give him a chance. Okay, and then on polling day, I was, my constituency is Gambot. I was there at 7:30 in the morning, one of the first to be there. And I noticed that Karim Raslan was in front of me in the queue. And little did I know that after he cast his vote, he was going to Awani, and it was then that he went on air and said he demanded Najib's resignation. And he was very brave to say that, So, and then this time I got a little more involved than the last. I was a polling agent at Titi Wangsa, and I was there sitting under the tent from 10 in the morning until 3 p.m. I was really exhausted. And the weekend before, I was a polling agent at Travers Police Station. And after the whole session, they took us to the jail, actually, where all the ballot boxes are being kept. So they assured us that it's very safe, So came polling day. I went to bed rather ashamedly, but I went to bed at midnight, as I always do, because I was really tired. And I was confident that we would see a new government. And I got up at 6 in the morning, and voila, that was it. So that was my experience.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sure all of us could have a story to share what happened that night. Well, in the Bible it says the first will be last and the last will be first. So the last person to arrive will have the first question this evening. Well, to Waiping, there is this growing concern in this Malaysia Baru, and this question is directed to you simply because I think you're the only person who would represent Pakatan Harapan here and to speak. But yet, there are pockets of disarray. Some lack of coordination, also backpedaling on election manifestos that we are beginning to hear. I think Malaysians generally want some kind of assurance, some kind of direction that a kind of coordinated effort is moving. Has Pakatan Harapan a common strategy for this new Malaysia, if I could ask you?
I think the biggest change that I have observed between Barisan Nasional and Pakatan Harapan is that there is no big boss in the government. In the past, I believe, even now when we speak to former ministers and deputy ministers, they quietly tell us, actually we propose all these things to the cabinet, but PM or deputy PM was against it, or there were groups in the cabinet who were not happy, and then, the idea just died. But in this case, in Pakatan Harapan, there's more consensus within the cabinet meetings. And of course, you see all these other committees and rather advisory councils set up, at least as a form of a guidance for the committee. Let's not forget that a lot of the MPs who are now ministers and deputy ministers have never held office before. They've never been actively in politics. At least Cynthia has been a councillor. Some of them have never even tasted that, and today they are ministers and deputy ministers. So I would expect some hiccups along the way. But I do hope that the media will also be fair to report. I think in the case of Dr. Mazli's black shoe comment, there were a lot of other education reforms that were mentioned at that particular event. But the media latched on to the black shoe, and that became headlines, and then that became just like international news, and Twitter just trolled him the whole day and for weeks on end after that. And even lately when he did that visit to PPUM and they asked him about the shoe, he said enough about the shoe, and that became news again. Oh, he's not budging about the black shoes. And yeah, so I think apart from the normal hiccups, I would think is, that the media has to be fair when they report what comes out of meetings. But I think as far as the manifesto is concerned, I believe there is no excuse for us not to fulfill what is in the manifesto. Like, for example, when you talk about the death penalty, it is in the manifesto. I assume Malaysians would have read the manifesto and then voted for us, Pakatan Harapan. Or you just don't like BN and then you voted for Pakatan Harapan. I don't. Well, others didn't care. But a lot of them read the manifesto. So now when we talk about the death penalty, the Malaysian public at large are like, no, don't abolish the death penalty, we want it. So sometimes it's a case of damn you do and damn you don't. But as far as important bread and butter issues, economic issues are concerned, I think it is this manifesto that has led us to our victory, and the public believed us. I sold, the public bought what I sold in the manifesto, and so I have a moral obligation to push my government and even to corner my government, to remind my government, to tell them, look, I sold all these points and people looked at me in the eye and voted for me. And you come and tell me you can't do it because you lack dollars and cents. I'm sure you can find a way to get that money to, if you're talking about promises that had been made as far as monetary reforms are concerned. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm a backbencher now, which is a good thing because then, we are the bad guys in the government. So it is, so it's our job to remind the government sometimes. So we find ways and means to scold them nicely in the Dewan Rakyat and remind them, these are the things that we promised, and so in that sense also there's more freedom. It's not, there's no backdoor discussions, under table dealings, if it's clear cut, if a minister says, oh, we don't think we're going to do it, we say, oh, but it's in the manifesto, you have to do it, that kind of thing,
But one of the things that I think Cynthia will jump in now in a short while, one of the things that we hear is that, it being said, or at least also what in the interview yesterday was said, that now that we are in government, we didn't expect to win, so we're not going to fulfill some of the things, Maybe Cynthia could say, what do you think that, in terms of good governance for this new government, what policies need to be set
Yes, I wanted to add on to what Kasturi was saying, because the manifesto now is like the most talked about document. In Barisan National's 60 years, nobody even looked at what their manifesto had to offer. So there's a difference here. I think it just showed the level of expectation. But I remember pre-elections, many civil society groups, including ours, lobbied the political parties very hard to insert various things into the manifesto. Now, it was so easy that everything got accepted that we thought, I think maybe they also don't think they are going to win power. You know, that the document will be just something really pretty. It looks good, but it might not be something that needed to be operationalized. So now they won. And Dr. Mahathir himself has said, yeah, I mean, you know, it's just a guide. It's not a Bible. So that's the first sign that not everything was going to be realized. But then, I mean, there was like, one day you announce something good, then next day there could be a U-turn announcement. Oh, no, the media misquoted me. No, this is not what we actually meant, and so on. So that uncertainty you're talking about was there. But my own sense and my worry for the future is, if you watch carefully, there's a lot of conversation on civil liberties reforms, which means some laws might be actually abolished. The anti-fake news law was abolished, but then for the first time we had the Dewan Negara actually resisting the abolishment of the law. Then Sedition Act is coming up, and then the news of the abolition of the death penalty. So all this is very good. But if you look carefully, the issue of economics, the bread and butter issues, economic reform, so far, nothing. So the worry is also how our money is going to be administered. So the question of governance then becomes quite central to where the reform agenda will actually sit, because we're talking about the same style of governing, then that would be quite problematic. So there's been no conversation of reforming the government-linked companies, for example, who were actually cash cows for the political parties. Minimum wage, that was another big problem, I thought, because if we weren't ready to actually talk about raising wages, maybe that could wait or something. I mean, something to discuss. But why you announce a 50 ringgit hike and then get so much backlash that now the minister has to take it back to cabinet and all that. But having said all that, the access to ministers and the access to backbencher MPs and all that have now really, really opened up. So for civil society, last time with the Barisan National Government, I mean, depending on how you aligned yourself with the corrupted regime before, it was extremely difficult to even get meetings. But now, you want meeting, you request, they will reply. You see them in parliament, just shake hands, talk, and you know, things happen. But this is what needs to be actually preserved. While not everything can be realized today or tomorrow, we need to have a roadmap of where we're going. And so that access is very important. So for me, media reporting about black shoes is actually not the media's fault, for me. I think Dr. Mazli and other ministers really need to get their act together, because if they know they're going to be taken for some kind of joke by everyone else, they have to be very careful about what they say. And it's interesting because Najib, for me, seems to be now like the best opposition, because every time the finance ministry comes up with a policy, he's the first one to knock it. You know, that big actor and everything that he is, claiming his innocence, you know, he's talking policy. It means he's fighting Lim Guan Eng point for point on everything policy. You don't see the opposition head Zahid Hamidi doing a job at all when it comes to that, or anyone else in UMNO. Maybe they're so worried about crumbling and disintegrating that they're not looking at where the policy issues are and all that. But Najib seems to be taking it on his own. So you've got different characters. I think the media is the one that is highlighting everything. So it's interesting times, good times, that actually is worthy of celebration.
Yeah, Anas, you wanted to...
I personally, I don't argue about the manifesto. Yeah? I think we got bigger issues at hand. Shoes and all that, they are all petty things that are taking us away from the real issues. This is my worry. Okay, I'm an optimistic person, but I'm also a businessman. I have to be a bit cautious. Number one, our country right now is held by a 93-year-old man. Yeah, without him, it will crumble. That's my opinion. Yeah, I can be wrong. Number two, we have a PM in waiting, which is a leader of a party that has hooliganism, yeah, cheating within the party during the election. Yeah. How are we going to have a prime minister from a party like that? They have to get their act together. Number three, we have what you call, and the party is split in between now because of Azmin and also Rafizi fighting. And that is not good for the country. Number three, 10 years ago, there was an economic crisis worldwide. It's a matter of time, it's coming right now. China and America is having a trade war, and that's not going to be good for us. And our own coffers are not really in good state. So again, there are a lot of issues that we need to worry about. And the next number five, we have an opposition that, as you said, only one fellow talking. I wonder if they're all waiting to jump. So we don't have what you call a real opposition. I mean, we have so many things, structure-wise, the economy, GLCs, I wonder what is, underneath the lines that we don't know. That's why they cannot do anything. It was probably so integrated, interconnected. We don't know what the hell is happening there. Now, from my point of view, these big issues are the real issues we're going to have. At the end of the day, it's going to be economics first. And if the new government does not settle, number one, their succession planning, who's going to be there after, and not just, PM in waiting. You need to be clear about it. Besides the PM in waiting, who is the one going to be, just in case the PM in waiting is not going to be the Prime Minister, who would it be, We have, on the other hand, the Tun Mahathir's party, Tan Sri Muhyiddin is unwell. Again, a lot of things for me, these are the worrisome thing. 5 or 6 really large issues that we don't see how we're going to solve it. So all these things about shoes, about all this, even the one MDB and all that, they are all actually just taking us away. Of course, we want the MDB to be, taken care of. But we need to focus on, the next 2 to 5 years. It's going to be a challenging 2 to 5 years because the world economy may not do well. What are we going to do about it? And we are now being held closely. Lucky for us, there's a 93-year-old man. And I wish he will have, a healthy life the next 5 to 10 years. But I've seen old people, if they get sick one time and just zap. That's my complete, my complete worry because Tun, I disagree with some people saying that he just played a minor role. No. He's the reason why where we are right here right now. He was the glue, he has the skill. And when Tun took over the opposition, I immediately announced that Barisan is going to lose. So there's so many important issues for us. And these are the issues we should be worried about. We should ask the government, what are we going to do if, the economic crisis of the world comes? How are we going to solve this problem? Is there going to be a compromise? Can we stop for a while, for 2-3 years? No more argument. Let's solve the current problem. What's the role of the business people to do that? What's the role of people like you and I? How can we help the government? Can we throw in some money inside? Because Malaysia is almost 40% what you call saving rate. So what are we going to do to pass through these 2 or 3 years' time? It is going to be a hard time if the world economy is going to be bad.
Well, our first 2 panelists had talked about the black shoes, so maybe I should bring Azima into this conversation. Well, that's what, people are reading, black shoes, then it became the black socks. Well, I don't know whether you can get the black shirts or after this, but, you have been in discussion with MOE, and I know that, you are in the inner circle now, trying to navigate, and it's one of the great concerns of many people, the education. I don't know about you, but, I'm a product of a public school. I think many of us would have gone to a public school because our time, private schools were either very expensive or they were not so accessible. In terms of education policies and reforms, where are we headed? with this new government that we have, the discussions that you're having with MOE?
Well, as far as the Advisory Council is concerned, the term is for 2 years, and we are supposed to revamp the system. But at the same time, I think last week, there is also another committee, a council that has been set up called the Jawatan Kuasa Dasar. There are 13 of them, there are 11 of us, and the Dasar people are now going to just concentrate on policy for the next 6 months. So we are going to work with them. And then I suppose, we've not met them yet, we will be meeting them next week. And I suppose once they decide on the direction, if there should be any change in policy, then we will follow through with, I suppose, the operational side. So I think we are listening to what the people are saying, and we are taking into consideration your concerns, and everyone is expecting a miracle. It's going to be tough to produce a miracle, but I think we have to be patient because there is no alternative, and we will just have to stick this out because whatever decisions that are to be made has to be thought through so that there will be no failures and consequences after that.
Are there some plans already in the pipeline that we could see coming in the next maybe 6 months, 1 year?
Not at the moment. We are still in the midst of being briefed by the Ministry of Education, so it's still very premature at this time. So before we make any decisions, we want to make sure of what is existing before we make any recommendations.
All right. Yeah, Dino, you've been very quiet. Well, maybe you know, in the area that your expertise is environmental protection, and you know, Pope Francis has been now a strong advocate of the environment with Laudato Si. Just, I mean, for our own reflection or our conversation this evening, in terms of for Malaysians to be more environmentally conscious, you know, what needs to be done at different levels for us? You know, though we talk about these things, you know, very soon, you know, like Selangor State with the plastic bag, soon no straws and all that, but I'm sure there's something more than that. How do Malaysians see the way forward for us to be more environmentally friendly and conscious?
Yeah, thanks. It's quite difficult to propose what Malaysians see, but I can certainly propose what I see for Malaysians. I think we are basically caught in a bit of a trap, a growth trap, an economic growth trap, where we have followed the bandwagon of consumerism. So we are quite quick to consume goods and services in a very unsustainable way, right? So, and that is unlikely to change in the immediate term, yeah? So when we think about the way we don't quite reuse things or refuse packaging, for example, or the way we use electricity, the way we use water, all the unsustainability is because we can afford to be unsustainable, if you put it in that way, you know? I mean, I remember in some places I've been, I travel around the world, you see people collecting every single small bit of thing that's recyclable. Every small bottle cap, a bottle, metal can, they collect because they have got nothing to do in their lives, and therefore everything that can be recycled ends up in recycling. We, on the other hand, it's quite common to see driving down the highway and to see a can being flicked out of the car. Very common. Go along the north-south highway, you'll see a can, and it's quite lucky if the can doesn't hit your car, right? But so, you know, like I said, I started off by saying I was in many ways worried about the current Prime Minister because of his track record of not being too concerned about environment. And if you understand what I mean, it was the rape of the Sarawak forest during the Taib regime, and the list will just go on too long for tonight, yeah? And the fears that I have seem to have a bit of a dichotomy right now. Huh? So on the one hand, the way the ministries on environment were divided has resurfaced again. So in the past, it was all sort of divided under his regime, and then Tun Badawi came on board, and they formed the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment. So they put all the like agencies together, so they could be coordinated as opposed to working in a fractious way. And that prevailed in Najib's administration. Now what has happened, the ministries have been split up all over again. And I just heard that the Marine Parks Agency, as opposed to being in a resource management agency because of its potential for ecotourism and protecting the turtles and the coral reefs, it's going to go back into the fisheries department, resource exploitation agency. So that's really a big challenge, yeah? So for the way I see the government has been taking its time to figure out how to divide up the agencies, the resource management agencies. And people, on the other hand, are not getting the direction they should from the government, yeah? So that's just very broadly. But there is a bright spark, there is a bright star amongst our midst, and I must tell you that's YB Yobian. She has been fantastic. Under her ministry, she did not wait for the right directives. She went ahead. She put proposals to Parliament, and she has got so many new things doing. First thing she told her ministry, we're going to have a campaign. No more plastic bottles in my ministry, no more plastic straws, no more plastic packaging. And you all have to educate yourselves. Any function we shall not see. So really by example. And then they've got till 2030 zero single-use plastic policy. It's a very nice document now, but they believe because of the industry and the people that depend upon that industry for a living, they will take that 2018 to 20 journey to slowly wipe out every single-use plastic. And of course, then there are other incentives being made, but I think on the one hand, we have to be very careful because we just cannot sit and wait for government. People need to self-mobilize. I think we need to self-mobilize. And therefore, Pope Francis's Laudato Si that came out in 2015, the way it spoke to all of us at large, I think it basically says, we should care for our common home. We have become so selfish. We think that Homo sapiens is the only being on the planet almost. I mean, Homo sapiens is only 120,000 years ago, old. And if we carry on in this trajectory, I think we will just lose that only planet we have. I mean, this is the only planet going around the sun that can support life. All the rest can't support life, right? And so the caring for our common home is supposed to actually ask us to put a pause on that unsustainable consumerism and to think about the way we live our lives. We're treating this planet like a big garbage dump, We're just piling up the filth. And if that carries on, even if we don't care about the biodiversity, we'll be killing ourselves. Not too long ago, there was a huge buzz in NASA because far, far away in the Aquarius constellation, they found a sun. And around that sun were 8 planets, the size of Earth. It's called TRAPPIST 1, if you read about this. And there was so much fuss about it. It's so far away. It is so far away that if you take the fastest spacecraft that we have, fly on a space shuttle, right? It will take you 33 light years. The speed of light, right? The speed of light. And if you calculate that in most simpler terms, what is the speed of light? It takes you 1.5 million years to get to TRAPPIST. I mean, first of all, you've got to put enough people inside the craft. Then you've got to keep breeding, right? So that there'll be some of us alive by the time we reach TRAPPIST. But if Homo sapiens is only 120,000 years old, and by the time we reach TRAPPIST, we won't be Homo sapiens anymore. We'll be maybe we'll go back, become Homo neanderthalis or Homo erectus or Homo something else, We'll maybe, as supposed to evolve, we'll go backwards, So I think the Pope's message is important to all of us that the way we're leading our lives is unsustainable. We've got to put a pause, we've got to reflect, we've got to do what's right. And if we don't, in fact, Ban Ki-moon, the UN Secretary General, he said, there is no plan B. He said there's no plan B, because there isn't planet B. There's no plan B. So we have to get it right. And I hope that encyclical, that was an 85-page document, will take the journey of being translated from a document into understanding and into actions. No point just reading another book, another letter. But all of us, whether it's the Catholic, the faithful, or other religions and people, we need to start taking action because we are at the tipping point. We are consuming 1.7 planets. We are in overdraft. The Living Planet report says that we are consuming 1.7 planets. And if we don't realize what that means, it simply means that you've taken more out. It's like overdraft at the bank. You've taken more than you have. And you've got to pay back, right? And you pay with interest. What is the interest? It is the cost to our children in the future. It is the cost to environment, goods and services, water, biodiversity. So that unsustainable trajectory, I think this is the point in time where that letter must be translated to all of us, taking actions at our self, the level of the self, making that hard decision to do something different. The family unit, the workplace, the group, the residents of an area, the state, the district, the state, the country, the region, the globe. Because if we don't, we will cook this planet and then we all won't live here anymore.
Well, since we are talking about Pope Francis, about Laudato Si, I just want to come back to you, YB. You have been very involved in the abolition of the death penalty. And I believe that this week there is a meeting of parliamentarians that you're very much into it. And Pope Francis has been an advocate of abolishing the death penalty. But there seems to be a kind of a lack of enthusiasm from the general population and also NGOs who are, very pro-human rights. A very subdued kind of response that you're getting from them also with regard to the abolition of the death penalty. Would you care to say a little bit more of what's happening in terms of, moving this forward?
I think what has happened over the past few weeks is that the Minister in the Prime Minister's Department, YB Liu Wui Kiong, he mentioned in a talk in UM when he was confronted by reporters what is the status of the death penalty, and he said, the cabinet meeting said it's going to go. And what, I think it was the Star, and it was a local Chinese daily, I think it was China Press, and they did this poll immediately to find out what the public opinion was. And you see, the thing about the death penalty is that you cannot simply ask, do you support the death penalty, yes or no? You cannot ask, it's not like whether you prefer chocolate or vanilla, or whether you like McD or KFC. It has to be a series of questions, and it has to be tailor-made for a certain society and a certain people and a certain culture and a certain nation. So at a time like this, when there's so much talk about how China is planning to execute corrupted officials, and even topics like that get so much of positive, in inverted commas, opinion from social media users. Yes, you should do the same thing to all those implicated in 1MDB as well. Just execute them and all. So that is just the sentiment that's going on out there. Actually, a lot of the NGOs or civil societies that who are pro-human rights and pro-right to life and anti-death penalty, they've been actually working for so many years, trying to engage with the government, sometimes even very softly, sometimes in a very hard manner. And now that the issue of the death penalty has come up, they are also treading carefully just to make sure that there's no huge backlash on this topic. So yes, we are having a seminar on the 30th and 31st of October, which is Tuesday and Wednesday. For the past few years, the parliamentarians for global action on the abolition of the death penalty have been approaching Nazri, the former tourism minister, who's one of the few vocal MPs at that time against the death penalty. So this is basically steered by them. The parliament is the venue host for this seminar. But more NGOs are coming forward. For example, Women's Aid Organization will be also attending this seminar. Suhakam, I've tried to get them to send a rep. Sisters in Islam, even the religious community as well. We are looking at representatives from the different various religious groups. And I think St. Ignatius Church is also having a talk tomorrow night, whether the death penalty is a deterrent or not. So I think at this point, when we are so close to actually realizing the abolition of the death penalty, everyone's very careful how we're going to go about it. It's like it's finally going to happen. It's like when you keep buying the lottery like all your life, and then finally when you know that your number kena already, you're like, really? Like, how am I going to go and collect it? And will I be robbed? Will it be retroactive? How, are we going to abolish 39B first for drug-related offenses? Because right now there are almost 1,300 people on death row. 60% of them are Malaysians, 40% are foreigners, and the bulk of that total, 900 plus, are drug-related offences. And the rest are, of course, murder, discharge of firearm, kidnap, armed robbery, etc. So I'm very happy that this announcement has been made, but because of the public feedback, and it doesn't help that some political parties are going to go on a signature campaign to retain the death penalty. If you must know, it's MCA. Yeah. And in case they forgot, there are Malaysians on death row abroad, and if they want to speak for Malaysians, if you are pushing for the death penalty to be reinstated, or rather, you know, for us to continue to execute, then what about Malaysians abroad? You know, with the most recent execution of Prabu in Singapore, so many Malaysians were very upset, and, you know, I know friends were pleading with their friends in Singapore, talk to your government, you know. We don't want criminals to be out, we want them to be punished. Let me be clear on that. You know, but to execute a person, no. My view is, in time, I would like to see the death penalty go in Malaysia in its entirety. But I believe what is going to happen now is we would first start with drug-related offences, 39B. So no executions for 39B, and a moratorium on all executions in Malaysia. Now, the interesting thing, how I got drawn to this topic, apart from human rights issues and freedom of religion and belief, which I got into trouble about a week ago, almost the entire Muslim Malay community was after me, was that a year back I was at just before the execution of the Batu Malay brothers who were implicated in a murder that happened in Negeri Sembilan, and they were executed at Kajang, I think. So there was a candlelight vigil the night before because the lawyers had submitted an appeal. So we were standing with the family members. The mother is a rubber tapper, a real rubber tapper, just at a time when you think there are no more estates and rubber tappers. She was standing there, you know, an old blouse and a sarong with a towel on her shoulder. It was drizzling, with the family members and all the cars, Myvi, Kanchil, Vira, Waja. You didn't see BMWs, CRVs, big, expensive, lavish cars. And to see, and all of us were standing in the rain, you know, holding umbrellas with our candles, and I thought, you would never see anak datuk pleading to the government to spare the life of their son. Or maybe a CEO of a company, or a minister's son, or someone prominent or influential. You would always read unemployed man, bus driver, lorry driver, clerk, college dropout, school dropout, illiterate, no ID on them. And then it dawned on to me that it was very much an issue that plagued the marginalized group, you know. It was a very economic, there was a huge economic implication there. Many of them did it for money. Most of these young people also who are serving time, you know, under death row they all come from B40 families, they come from poor families, many of them come from single parent families, and then it dawned on to me that no one can guarantee me there will be no miscarriage of justice, no matter how heinous the crime. Now, I want to see criminals punished, but executing them is just not the way to do it. Yeah, thank you.
Well, I'm not too sure that some of you may remember in the Archdiocese in the year 2013, we had this campaign during the season of Lent against the death penalty. There was a big signature campaign that was given to the minister. I'm not too sure how many people signed, but tens of thousands of people signed. Hopefully you can trace that back and then deliver it to the minister again. I think it was given to Nazri at that time, I think in 2013.
Was 2016 the year of mercy?
Yeah, but this 2013 we did. There was a big conference, I remember attending here in KL at that time against...
Yeah, I remember that. I remember reading about it, Father, but in 2016 we organized a walk in Butterworth because it was the year of mercy, and we had a spate of executions in 2016, you know, which was terrible. And, you know, executions in Malaysia are normally done on Fridays. Batu Malay brothers, they were executed on Wednesday. We were like, why the rush and why the hurry? But normally the executions are carried out on Fridays, just before dawn. And it's always done very hastily, in secrecy. The families normally find out just a few days before their son is going to be executed. They get a letter saying, you know, your child is going to be executed in the nearest time. Kindly make arrangements to collect the body once the execution is completed. So it's very painful. And yeah, so I think it's a poor logic when a government is seeking a public opinion on the death penalty, but never asks the public, so tell us, do you like to pay your traffic summonses or not? If you don't like, then you don't have to pay. Or do you like to pay taxes, and what do you think about increase in taxes? But when it comes to the death penalty, many governments always tend to ask the people, what do you all think about the death penalty? You don't like it? Okay, we'll keep on executing people. It's poor logic, you know, that, and when you do that, you always frame it like, do you support or not? General public, you know, it's a very emotional argument, and they say, no, you know, criminals must be hanged, yeah.
Yeah. Cynthia, your organization has been, you know, championing against corruption, and, you know, and we all know that, you know, corruption in Malaysia has kind of taken on its own life. It's like an institution by itself, at every level, you know, at every level, whether it's at the highest level or even at the grassroots. There's always this expectation that, you know, you want some favors to be done. There must be some kind of an inducement. Do you think that with this, the last 6 months with this new government, there has been a change with MACC waking up suddenly overnight, going after lots of people? But yeah, that's at one level. But, you know, at the ordinary level, has there been a change of mindset among people?
Well, the Pakatan Harapan government won on an anti-corruption ticket. They won promising good governance reforms. So Dr. Mahathir, I think, has stayed his course in making some of these promises happen. So I give credit when it's due, but some things, I think the role of us as citizens become extremely important to check that whatever these governments say they will do, they actually do. For example, for the first time ever in Malaysia's history, on the 1st of November, we're going to know how rich our politicians are, which means the assets are going to be declared by members of parliament, as well as those who hold public office. Now, those that hold public office means those that actually hold public funds will now have to declare their assets at the start of the term. This was a promise in the manifesto. This was one of the things we actually worked very hard to insert. It was originally meant for just people, cabinet ministers, and people who hold the finances, the taxpayers' money. But now it's been extended to members of parliament. But did you know that there's been a delay? So I think that point about public feedback is really very important, because when there's a delay, we need to ask, why is there a delay? Or are you actually going to do it or not? So there's a big role for us to play. And I think that earlier question about what's the role of Malaysians in all this, this is one of it. So 1st of November, we're supposed to actually have that very essential piece of information on governance. Then the other important announcement that has been made, which actually for many governments, democratic transitions and governments who just want power, one of the most difficult things is to actually have a law on political financing, which means how political parties get their money to fund activities, to run elections and all that. But this one apparently is a key priority of the government. So we hear from the Law Minister that the AG Chambers has already drafted a preliminary bill for debate, and it will be brought to Parliament in April next year for discussions and all that. So if that happens, it would be, wow, really, we're going to have a law on political financing, and we're going to have our members of Parliament and government declare their assets. And then a freedom of information law is supposed to be in the works as well. But there's no roadmap, or there's no clarity on whether it's going to happen within 1 year, or whether it's going to happen within 5 years or 10 years. So we can't just live in this cloud of hope and euphoria that it will happen. So with all people in power, I always remind myself and every one of us that we have to check them. And our role is so critical at this time that what is said has to find a way to get it done. Where there's a will, there's a way, you know. And there must be public support. So in the case of the death penalty, if I can go back to that, I think the the concerns might be real, that terrorism, for example, and mass killing. Do you save the life of the killer who had killed hundreds of thousands of people? So I think that kind of rationalizing needs to happen, because the best supporters would be Malaysian people to actually have that manifesto lived out. So that conversation and that debate actually needs to be carried out. And freedom of information would be another very contentious one. How transparent should a government be? Right now, even the Council of Eminent Persons report is still secret. But we Malaysians have forgotten to ask, why is it still secret? First few days, everybody criticized, bantai them for keeping it secret. But the 100 days have now become 200 days. And we still don't know what the reform committee had actually proposed, what are the economic reforms of the Council of Eminent Persons, and of course the other, of which I was a member, is the 1MDB Special Investigations Committee. There's a whole lot that Malaysians actually need to know and should know, and it's our right to know. But how much of it should be kept secret, how much not, is actually something that we have to debate. We have to put it on the table. So the job of actually voting for change just started on the 9th of May. There's just so many things to actually fix when it comes to improving governance. And a big part to play is really the check and balance and the public feedback. So in some issues, public feedback might be a bane, you know, like I think the death penalty and also SOSMA, which is the security laws. Some people are saying, you abolish that, all the gangsters are going to run wild. And organized crime is going to be like a big thing that the Malaysian government can't handle, because our Malaysian police are so inadequate, inept, cannot do their job and all that. So they hide behind detention without trial laws and stuff. So I think that conversation, like what is being initiated today, needs to continue at various levels. So the issue of fighting corruption, issue of improving governance, bringing in good laws, reforming the bad laws, or abolishing them altogether, needs to have our participation. And the first, I believe, is to actually get a plan, a roadmap. Okay, if you tell me this is going to take 3 years, local council elections, the minister says 3 years, although that's not in the manifesto. I think she made it part of her commitment. It affects all of us, quality of life, local councils not delivering services on time and so on. So what's the agenda, what's the plan? Can we at least have an elected mayor, for example? So, you know, the DBKL land won't be stolen by some yayasan, and then we don't know what's happening and stuff. So there's so many things, but I think we just need to help the government prioritize. And we do it through members of parliament and watch parliamentary proceedings and different things like that.
Yeah, so I'm just going to take some of the questions that are coming in already. It's a long list of questions. We'll probably be here till tomorrow morning breakfast. I'm not sure whether we are prepared for that. But one question here is, recently I think some of you may have gotten the video clip, Comedy Court. They made a song about Lompat. You know, did you see that? You know, jumping from one YB. I think this is one of the concerns is that, you know, all this clamping down, there's a report, I think today or yesterday, you know, about quite a number of UMNO branches might be shut down because they may have received money from the 1MDB, and these people are, you know, going to switch allegiance. So there's this worry about, you know, new Malaysia, old mentality. Is there anything being done to kind of like curb that kind of, you know, switching parties, jumping from one place to another?
The late Mr. Karpal Singh was very adamant about party hopping. I think he spoke very fiercely against it. But that was at a time when we were in Pakatan Rakyat and not Pakatan Harapan. I think the DAP stand is quite firm about party hopping. But today, I think Tun also responded saying that Bersatu will not accept this supposed 40 UMNO MPs who are going to jump ship. I think it's a bit disturbing personally for me, because you need to have a good opposition in a country for check and balance. And from the very little that we have in the opposition today, if all 40 are going to jump onto the government, what kind of opposition are we going to have? You know, let's be open and clear about this, you know. You need to, like, as how I am checking my government, you also need the opposition to do that as well, you know. And I think at the end of the day, it's a moral question as well. Whether, personally, I think we shouldn't accept these 40, personally, this is my personal opinion, at the end of the day, because many of these MPs who jump ship, who join the government now, are doing it either because the choice is I resign from my party and join you, or I spend time in Sungai Buloh. So, yeah. So some of them have done that. I won't mention names. Maybe you all also have crystal balls in your houses. You all know who I'm talking about also. But I think this is something that the top leadership of Pakatan Harapan must sit and discuss. Of course, the media is, you know, they're at a frenzy reporting this, you know, with Tok Pa, the former KPDN KK minister, I think, joining in Mustafa. I think he's one of the better ones from UMNO. A lot of substance to, even when he was an UMNO minister, he still had a lot of substance and, you know, but the rest of them, I know a lot of them are tweeting like, you know, please, no more sampah sarap and things like that. I concur, you know, and I think Malaysians did not come out on the 9th of May to vote for this change, and then we open our doors to all kinds of funny, dodgy, shady characters to be a part of the government. And then they will use that to create that kind of a culture again. And then coming back to the kind of hurdles that we are facing in government, I mean, let's not forget, with all respect to good civil servants out there, we are dealing with 1.6 million civil servants. Many of them who came out and voted for change, but many of them also have the BN DNA in them when they do work and the way they operate in Putrajaya. One example is the kind of answers that we get for questions that we've asked. So some of the questions that we have put in are the same questions that we've asked the previous government. So these same questions we asked the new government, and the answers are similar. And it's really disappointing because I take it back to the minister and I said, what is this? Look at the question I asked and look at the rubbish that I got. I said, it's the same thing. And she says, you know, it's such a headache to go through. The officers just never listen to us also. So these are things that we need to also slowly reform, you know. I mean, we hope one day that all these civil servants, while I respect the right to disagree and the right to different opinion, and I respect civil servants also who don't like Pakatan Harapan, you know, we can agree to disagree, but at the end of the day, it is, you are civil servants, you know, you serve the public as we do. So at the end of the day, when we ask for questions and we get good answers from you, it's also good for your ministry and your government that pays your salary at the end of the day. So yeah, these are some of the little Napoleons here and there, you know, statelessness, such a headache, you know, guidelines are given, laws are there, but then little Napoleons don't execute it, yeah, so
it's interesting that this, about 2 weeks ago, I had some time and I caught myself watching TV1, the proceedings in the parliament, which I've not done for a long time, I will admit. It's just like a reversal of roles, you know, now the former BN government is acting exactly what the opposition was before. And it was quite funny in some ways, you know, the behavior there. But we'll not get into that. Dino, there's a question for you, actually. Someone is asking, you know, with regard to animal rights, is there anything being done currently? Legislation to protect animals? Most specifically, they're talking about, you know, stray dogs, and, you know, there's some many dog lovers here in the audience.
Yeah, that's a very interesting one, animal rights. Actually, my background is on worrying about animals in the wild, rather than animals domesticated, domestic cats and dogs and goldfish in a bowl. but really, it's the people that actually have love for animals, whether it's, you know, some kind of domestic animals. That from my experience, I noticed that these are the ones who have a greater care for biodiversity, you know? Because I think caring for an animal, making sure an animal survives, comes from inside. I think comes from inside, you know, because if you have a pet fish and you don't feed it, it'll just die in the bowl. Huh? I just want to share you a very small story. So my kids and I were at home, and they shouted and said there's an injured bird and I rushed to the back of the kitchen, and there was this bird that had a huge rip. All the skin of the neck was ripped apart, and then the esophagus was ripped apart, so the second layer, and all the seeds it had eaten were all pouring out on the floor, you know, just regurgitating everything, just ripped apart, you know. And it was a pink neck pigeon, beautiful bird. It's a wild pigeon. And I thought, this bird's going to die. And I'm from a strong environment, WWF background, but I said, this bird's going to die. So I put it in a plastic bag, tied it up, thinking it will just naturally run out of oxygen and it will die. Because usually you can put it in the freezer, you know, but my wife, I think, who's in the audience, will disallow me from putting it in the freezer. But so I went for a meeting. I came for a meeting on Laudato Si with some other people, and then I went back home, and she said, the bird is still alive. You better take it to a vet now, okay? So I rushed it to the vet in Setia Alam, and this vet looked at it, and she said, I can do something to this bird, but will you care for it? Okay. So she stitched up the esophagus first, and then she stitched up the skin, and then she said, here's 1 week worth of antibiotics, but you have to administer the antibiotics, and then you've got to feed it soft fruit, and if it survives, it will survive. Otherwise, you would have wasted 178 ringgit for the surgery. So I took it home, and it survived. It survived, we kept it alive, it survived, and then we put it and just let it go, and it just flew away, just flew over the roof, you know. Yeah. So the thanks is not to me. The thanks is the spirit, the will to want to survive in the bird, number one. Number two, my wife, who knew better than me, that if this animal got veterinary care, it will survive. Now, there are lots of people who take strays home, who care for stray cats, who neuter them and spay them, who spend a lot of money because they love animals, you know. The challenge I have in my mind is that people, you know, with all due respect, they are exposed to the things immediately around them, right? But when the last rhino died, for example, the one rhino was shot in Sabah, or the last Javan rhino was killed in Cat Tien in Vietnam, right? In 2010. Hardly any media coverage. We went to St. Petersburg on the Global Conference on Tigers. We went there in 2010 with 500 tigers. That was our number. And we pledged to double tiger numbers. Actually, our numbers are 250 now. Not double, with half the number of tigers in Malaysia. And the work that my ex-organization and some others have been doing suggests that it's down to 150 tigers now left. Now, a lot of people, I mean, we're talking of care for the environment, care for the animals, but there's a lot of beautiful, nice things that are too far away from us. They're now too distant. They're in some place called Taman Negara, Royal Belum State Park. They're just too far away. And most of us hardly go to these places. I mean, when I asked the question a few days ago, I said, how many of you have been to the Kinabatangan Wildlife Sanctuary? Just a quick show of hands. The Kinabatangan Wildlife Sanctuary, to see the unique, globally unique pygmy elephants. See, 0 in this hall. 1, 2.
We probably know the Kinabatangan former MP.
Yes, Bo
the current MP.
Bo Mokhtar. He's more. How many of you have been to Taman Negara? I am very grateful to all of you. How many of you have been to the Royal Belum State Park? Okay, you see, the more you go out there and expose yourself beyond stray dogs and stray cats, the more you start to appreciate what Laudato Si is all about, caring for our common home. That this home is not just about us, not just the dominance of Homo sapiens on this planet, over-consuming spaces, chopping forests, over-consuming the marine, overfishing the seas, you know. But there's all kinds of creatures in the food chain, in the food web, that depend on a clean environment for food and water and space to live, right? So I started off by saying I didn't believe in Tun's leadership or the environment. I then followed up by saying I see a star in the government in YB Yobi Yin. But it is for all of us. Having put that government in place, we need to know what are the issues of the day. We need to go out there and start to fight and let our voices be heard, whether it's Linus today, whether it's something else happening tomorrow, whether it's the fact that we are one of the countries with the highest rate of forest loss in the last 10 years. You compare to a lot of the tropical rainforest countries, we have got the highest rate of forest loss. Very ashamed. You know, of course, expansion of oil palm and so on and so forth. So if we just, and of course, one may wonder, yeah, so what? We still have got 50% forest, right? But if we keep losing that forest, we will keep losing our ability to get water. Water, forest is the most important thing for water. It traps precipitation, it allows it to flow, then we tap it, we build hydropower dams, we use it for domestic use, so on and so forth. And if we don't even know how important forests are, forget about the biodiversity. When we run out of water, Singapore can buy water from us. Where will all the states in the peninsula buy water from? Selangor is buying water from Pahang already, right? The raw water transfer project. Buy from Sumatra? Sumatra has hardly any forest left. So I think we need to wake up. We need to wake up. Go beyond just what you can see around you, right? To a point where you start to be aware of the, what we call natural capital. Forests, the marine ecosystems, the life-giving, life support systems. Start to be aware of what it is, and then start to appreciate, understand that without those, life as we know it will start to be compromised. And that is why Laudato Si is going to be very relevant in the decades to come. It is not just something to be forgotten in the years. It's going to be relevant, believe me, in the decades to come, because the message is going to last for a long, long time.
Yeah, so there are a few other questions, but maybe I'll give an opportunity for the audience here to engage with the panelists. In the interest of time, if you have a question, make it short, pointed. If you want to direct the question to a particular member of the panelists, please state so. So it'll be quite easy for them also to take note of your question and address it.
Thank you, Father. Before I ask my question, I just want to also say I'm Mary Magdalene from Church of Divine Mercy. Divine Mercy Church has a strong tradition of organizing forums and political discourse and dialogue sessions. So for the last 10 years, ever since Father Paulino, we have been doing this. So it's not something new to us. And I want to thank the organizing committee for continuing the good work. My concern is on two issues. Not just the fact that there are some MPs from UMNO who want to join PPBM, but more importantly, the money politics and cronyism in Pakatan Harapan. I've always felt that Keadilan PKR is the weakest link in the coalition. And now we hear about money politics in the party elections, and we hear about ex-UMNO people who have come in and standing for elections at the division level and so on. So maybe YB Kasturi Patum can tell me, what is Pakatan Harapan going to do about this? Has it been discussed? Are they concerned about this? It's not just the UMNO MPs coming in now, but people who had come in at the grassroots level even into the party. My second question is to Page, representative from Page. When Dr. Mazli took over, one of the first things he did was to encourage people to send in their proposals, their comments, their views on what can be done about the education system. So I was one of those who also sent in my views and my proposals. Was he really serious about it? Are they really looking into it, or is just forgotten? Because a lot of us sent in emails and so on. So what's the status of that? Thank you.
Thank you. YB Kasturi, you want to respond first?
Thank you, Mary Magdalene, for your question. So the example that you used was that UMNO members, ex-UMNO members are now running for elections in PKR on a grassroots level. Now I must say this is and it's obvious, it's a party thing. So as a DAP MP, I don't think it's fair for me to comment on what happens in PKR. However, my stand, and I believe many other MPs also concur with me, is that there's a zero tolerance for money politics and cronyism. I hope that this matter would be discussed on a Pakatan Harapan leadership level, and that the leaders, the top leadership of PKR are reminded, that they have a standard to live up to in the eyes of as elected reps, that the public have this, we have very, very high expectations to live up to compared to what Barisan Nasional had to live up for the past 60 years. And everything that we do is in social media, it's in the public sphere. While I am also happy that these things have been exposed, which means more people are coming out to talk about money politics in their party. I hope that individual political parties can nip it in the bud as soon as possible, so that we can cut out all these cancerous characters or specimens who are, because as it starts to grow, then you become another Barisan Nasional 2.0. And I've also been reading about it. It's very disappointing. I hope members of political parties remember that you joined the party because you believe in the party's manifesto and the struggle and what the party stands for, their doctrines and their ideology, rather than join a political party so you can get a contract at the end of the day, or maybe you become a candidate or become a councillor, which is normally the trend of what Barisan Nasional had set. I agree with you, it's very disheartening and it's worrying. So I hope in the next few days to come that there will be some discussion, perhaps on Wednesday, where the Cabinet convenes for a meeting. Parliament is in session, as you know, the budget is on Friday, so we hope we'll be able to get through this as soon as possible. Yeah, I hope that answered your question. Yeah. It's a party thing. But I think as far as Pakatan Harapan is concerned, we've also heard here and there bits and pieces of cronyism, and there's always that talk of, I supported you during the campaign, I stood in the rain and put your banners up and things like that. So do you not have a project to give me, in case you want to do some wiring? And, these are all inevitable questions that come. So you're normally caught in this moral gridlock, whether do you reward your supporters this way at the end of the day, or do you reward someone totally, that you don't know, but you look at his credentials, whether he can get the job done or not. I think it's a little bit of both. If you think the person has the ability, has a good price, now it's all open tender, as you know, even in my office. Even for the smallest project, we always go by 3 quotations, etc. So we try to do as much as we can, 2 steps forward, sometimes 4 steps back, fighting fire, biting the bullet every day, to do what is right, to do what is correct, even though it is not easy. But thank you for keeping us in check about this, because it shows that the public is worried about the direction of political parties within Pakatan Harapan. So this will keep us all in check. So we will go, and tomorrow when I meet my PKR MP friends, I will tell them, do you know somebody actually said they're worried about what's going on in your party? Can you get your act together, please? Yeah, it's good. It's healthy discussion. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. We actually had a council meeting last week, and this is exactly what I asked the ministry. I said, I know that you received a few thousand responses, so what are you doing about it? So they said they're in the midst of categorizing it so that they can simplify, and then they will analyze it and see how best they can respond. So it's not been forgotten, but it needs me to give your concern some attention. Please email to the crowd, to me, pagemalaysia@gmail.com, pagemalaysia@gmail.com, and I will see what I can do. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure, yeah.
That point about party hopping and lawmakers' code of ethics, etc. Ideally, the lawmakers should resign and then get a fresh mandate from the people. But we have a legislative block or a problem here, which means that if a lawmaker resigns now, that person is not eligible to be in active politics for another 5 years. So that, I feel, needs to be reformed first, or that law has to be replaced, because it then becomes unfair for the lawmaker to resign. So now that lawmaker should resign, get a fresh mandate from the people, instead of hopping from one party to another. So I think that part of the reforms that we are advocating should include this, that if a lawmaker resigns, he should not be out in the cold storage for another 5 years. It doesn't make sense. He just should recontest, get a fresh mandate from the people. So I think that's a bit of a block there for anyone who wants to actually hop parties or move parties. They can't, because they have to actually get a new mandate from the people.
Question to the parliamentarian who is here. I'm very sorry you have to take it. As you said, all of us went on May 9th and voted. How strong, very honest question to you, how strong is the consensus among the political parties? Is it really honest across the table, or is it still dominance by anyone? I know I'm not sounding direct, but you have so many parties there linked to one, and there's a common thread. And two, have you all ever discussion about succession? I do agree, people said about, Anas made a statement about person in waiting, and Malaysia, I think sometimes gossips really have a lot of better credentials than even CNN. What's your take? I know you're on neutral church grounds, not on things, but what is the consensus among all the parties? Two, there are whisperings on the side. Today I too came back from PKR elections from Selangor, and I did hear these rumblings on the floor. So what is the take among all the so-called government now? And two, what about who is next in line, and with what's his name, our home minister quite sick, and there are rumors of cronyism. CM Menteri Besar of Kedah to be the home minister and things like that. What's your take, personal take on behalf? But I wish you can speak on behalf of DAP and the general people here. Thank you.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you for your question on how strong are the consensus. Sorry, your name is? Devan. Thank you, Mr. Devan. How strong are the consensus across the table? From what I've gotten discussing with ministers and deputy ministers, and a lot of issues that have surfaced on social media, or issues that we as backbenchers have raised, have actually been highlighted in cabinet meetings. And there has been a healthy discourse. Honestly, I mean, I say this without any prejudice or biasness. There has been actually a healthy discourse on all these issues. I do think at the end of the day, as Prime Minister, Tun has to call the shots, and he has to make a decision. As far as, for example, the minimum wages, I know there have been proposals on the amount that, 1.5 can be very steep for small businesses. Let's start with 1,125 or 1,250, something like that. But at the end of the day, I don't know how the 1,050 came about. I wish I did. But I think compared to Barisan Nasional, there is a positive, healthy discourse. And like I said, there's no big brother in Pakatan Harapan now. And at the end of the day, all these reforms that we're talking about, changes, whether they need amendments to the law, policy amendments, can they be just, through a circular and then get things done? The devil is always in the details. And if me as a lawmaker, a backbencher, have so much to juggle. I can't imagine what ministers and deputy prime ministers and even the prime minister has to go through. The whole country is basically waiting for you to say yes or no, how up or down, left or right, black or white. But yes, I think there is a healthy discourse in the cabinet meetings, even also among Pakatan Harapan component parties. As far as succession is concerned, I don't want to speculate anything, and I don't think I'm in a position to make any statement here to all my learned friends on the Tun's successor and after him. It is worrying. I cannot lie, you. So hard.
Perhaps you can go back and look at your crystal ball and let us know the next time.
So I would not want to comment on it at the moment, and I would just take it as it comes. But I think sometimes if you do get a chance to bump into a minister or a deputy minister, invite them to join you for a cup of coffee, and then pick their brains, and perhaps you'll be able to understand the challenges that they go through. You know, something so simple to announce can have such huge backlash from the public, you know, and how information is given out as well. So I know that ministers and deputy ministers are really walking on eggshells when they make certain statements. But at the end of the day, even though it's hard, even though it is, it will be challenging, but I think what is important is we have good people who are leading the country, supported by good people like all of you all here, who check on these good people leading the country, so that we are always kept on track and so that we deliver whatever we have promised. Yeah, I think it's a two-way system. I hope that has answered your question. As far as the successor is concerned, I'm praying, just like everyone also. I mean, at the end of the day, whoever becomes Prime Minister won't be acting alone. He cannot make decisions on his own just like that. It has to go through a consensus between the parties, between the cabinet, between civil society, between academicians and stakeholders at the end of the day. Yeah, so, yeah, thank you.
Okay, we are kind of running out of time. Could take one last question, just one last one. Yeah.
Hello. I'm Nancy.
If you could keep it short, then we could have
yes,
the three just very quickly.
I'm an educator for 30 years. Okay, I would like to know when meritocracy will be implemented at all levels in the government and in the civil service, especially in schools. Number two, this may be sensitive. I'm sorry, but I have to mention this. Islamization has overtaken the public schools. I don't know about universities, but when I was in university, yes, I think it was seeping in. Now, to such a stage that even Christian Fellowship Society was not allowed to be have activities in schools. They had to transfer their activities to a church nearby. Okay, so I want to know when whether this trend will be taken up, by Page, or this, what I mean is, this issue will be taken up by Page and maybe given some thought to it, yeah, by the relevant authorities. Okay. Now, Ustads are
could we, we'll take your two questions. Maybe we just the two others, and then to allow them also the opportunity.
This one is about moral education. So, moral studies, can we have this for Page? Can we have priests and other religious people enter the schools for morals instead of moral studies? Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman in blue. Just a brief statement or a question, just, yeah.
Yeah, it's a question. Now, one of the biggest sources of corruption are actually on the awarding of works. Now, is there a consensus now that all government contracts will be an open tender? That would be one of my first part of the question. And secondly, will there be a continuation of what we had before of having special interest for the Bumiputras in terms of advantage, some sort of a quota system in tendering of their works? Thank you.
And the last one, yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the second question clearly.
About the quota.
Will there be,
and
will
the
there
last
be a
bit,
continuation that projects and contracts will be given some special privileges to the Bumiputras?
Well, mine is a simple, straightforward, no heavy thinking. Well, I felt that after the 61 years of government, when they gave the manifesto for the 100 days, it's okay. I'm sure much of us will agree that we'll give the government a chance to, sometime, maybe a year, two or what, but make sure they work towards it. So I've got a few things to ask, but I won't ask here. I don't know where to go and ask. If I go and ask our local new DUN office, everything they say, oh no, you go to that place, you go to that place. So I would like to ask, after so many years of me in the government too, I would like to ask that we have an avenue where we can genuinely, I'm sure there'll be many, if you have phone call, there'll be many crank calls and all, but maybe set up a proper center in each DUN office or what, where they can take public matters genuinely, maybe we go with reference number, with proper this one, and give it to them. And they look into it and let us know. Because for certain things, oh, I have to go all the way to Putrajaya, I have to go here, there, everywhere. So maybe this new government will look into it genuinely, set up little centers where we can take our complaints genuinely and see some solving of the problems. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So would you like to first, Azima, would like to take?
Yeah, we realized that Islamization of schools is a concern for everybody. And we are looking at that. So again, if you have any ideas as to how we can sort of rework how moral education especially can be conducted in schools, it would be, we definitely will look at it, because we are definitely looking at that area.
YB Kasturi, you're on the hot seat.
I think from Nancy. Where's Nancy?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Your question on when will meritocracy be implemented, and the question on Islamization taking over schools. I think we need to, the root of this evil is what was known as the Biro Tata Negara, I would like to believe, which is the National Civics Bureau, parked under the Prime Minister's Department. So as we all know, and for those who don't, it was a office that was a brainwashing tool to radicalize mostly civil servants, and some of the university students also had gone through it. It was very potent, and we face all these derogatory remarks and comments, and how Muslims or non-Muslims are treated in government offices is a direct product of this brainwashing in BTN. So after Pakatan Harapan took over, after much pressuring, we have now abolished the Biro Tata Negara. So it doesn't exist anymore. So from now on, we hope we will see less of this kind of vile, poisonous, racial derogatory remarks targeted at any gender, any race, or anyone of any religion. Now, I had actually asked a question in Parliament last week, whether exam papers would see you don't have to fill up your ethnicity, your kaum, your bangsa, and your agama anymore. Because, you know, it's an old wives' tale that the government always looks at what is the percentage of passes according to racial breakdown or religious breakdown, and then, you know, I don't know how far it's true, but this was something that was asked by the public to me to put forward in Parliament. So the answer that I got was that they don't use the word kaum anymore, but they use ethnic, keturunan. You know, it's the same difference anyway. So the reply, which I think was given by someone who is an officer in the ministry, was that there would no longer be religion on UPSR, PT3 and SPM exam papers, but on STPM and university, yes, to gauge the number. Oh no, it was for PT3 and SPM, yes, you must have the religion there so that they would know how many students would be sitting for moral paper and how many students were sitting for the Islamic paper. I thought it was a bit of a fluke sort of an answer, you know. I think I would have to pursue that with the minister and talk to the minister and say, this is a funny answer that you all have given me to my question. But I agree, I think it is time that we slowly move away from you know, awarding marks and looking at your skin color and then only deciding what you should get. I think, you know, more developed countries, you know, are solely based on meritocracy. And I also think that I mean, I know I'm just, you know, maybe inching into your expertise, but I think we should move away from exam-based results and more for skill-based training. I know schools in so many other developing countries that children at the age of 15 are taught how to bake, how to sew, how to fix things. And then at that age, they know, oh, this is what I'm really good at. Because some kids are good at something and some kids are not. I'm just, like for me, I'm really bad at accounts. So I have very good people who take care of the accounts in my office. MACC can come anytime and knock my door. But yeah, so I agree with you. I hope this will be something that I will push for also in Parliament. Are all government contracts on open tender? So it is a very sensitive subject, as we all know. Class F Bumiputra contractors versus the rest of Malaysian businessmen. It is also, this sort of a culture and this sort of a policy was actually cultivated by UMNO Barisan Nasional as a lifeline for them. You create a pool of people that won't bite the hand that feeds them, which is something that we have to slowly crack. It's like one big mountain, and then you cannot just go and demolish it. If not, it'll all come crashing down on you. So you have to sit and slowly changkul, with the right tools and get your friends all together, because if you do it on your own, then you might be submerged under it. So you get good people with you and you slowly start to changkul, and then in time to come, you have this whole wall, this whole mountain of inefficiency, corruption, and cronism breaking. And we hope that we have to make sure that we don't build it up again. But then contractors, there are good contractors, and then there are also contractors who don't like this change, and they're always cornering MPs and cornering the government to keep to that old practice and reminding us, like just 2 days ago, I received a quotation in my office for some road works, and it was exactly like what my mother would bring back after she used to buy like onions and garlic and sugar from your kedai runcit, Just a small quotation, and it was just handwritten. How many bags of crusher run, how many bags of cement, so much of work, handwritten, no chop, no signature. And he said, why you all cannot use this now? Last time Gerakan can use when I can get this project. These are real stories. So these are also cultures that we need to break. Contractors also need to learn. If you want to apply for a housing loan, you can't just give them some 6:30 pay slip and expect your loan to be approved. So why expect this sort of a double standard when you go to an MP's office and say, I used to give this before, and then they accepted it, and I tell them, no, I can fix this drain for you, but get me good, proper paperwork and everything will be done properly. The drain will not be fixed. So I encourage people to go and get good contractors who have good track record, not someone who will give me a handwritten like kedai runcit receipt and expect me to release funds for projects to be done. So it's a two-way thing. Auntie, for the problems that you've been facing, Okay.
Yeah, so if we can allow you to just answer the last part, where can she go?
I apologize for the problems that you had faced at the certain ADUN's office. These are all teething problems. There are new staffs in new ADUN's offices, so they need some training as well. For now, in Penang, we always practice a no wrong door policy. Unless funds have to be dispersed, then there are certain guidelines, like my money from Batu Kawan cannot go outside to another constituency. But I think your ADUN's office or your MP's office should be your one-stop center to be able to help you. But in this case, like I said, these are teething problems. There are new staffs who are learning as well how to engage with public, and I hope you can give them a little bit of time. But your idea is good. I will bring it up to my party, and also hopefully they'll bring it up to the Pakatan Harapan meeting to ensure that all service centers would be your one-stop center, at least to direct you to some places. For example, forms can be obtained from our officers. Submissions must be done by the applicant. Because when you submit, then you're told, okay, your documents are complete, job sign, and, of course, exceptions can be made. If you are disabled, then we try to assist you and all that. But, we have, very, very high public expectation to live up to. So, but thank you for your support. Just give us a bit of time until we'll brush up and we'll improve. Thank you.
Okay, so we kind of exceeded our time already. Unlike May 9th, I don't think YB has the authority to declare a public holiday tomorrow. We all need to get to work. So maybe just to kind of round up this conversation, maybe just 1 minute for our panelists. I think one of the things that I said in the beginning is, what do we take back? How can we now also contribute to making this change, more possible in the areas, the different areas? And I think it's not just holding them accountable, but I think we also need to do our part more than just, casting our votes. So just maybe 1 minute each in your different areas. Whether Anas could talk about, national unity. How can we contribute, Azima, about education, policies, in environment, good governance, and all these legislative reforms? What can the citizens do now?
I think I'll try to link this with one of the ladies' comment on Islamization in schools. As a Muslim, I'm very sad when people call it Islamization, because it is not Islamization. I think here is where my brother and sister Christians must start saying that that's not Islam. There's a small brand of probably Wahhabism or Salafism. And if it is Islamization, then the Christians and the non-Muslim would have been allowed to have your prayers there. So we need to really understand, be careful when we say, they're doing Islamization, they're doing this and that. Your children will think that is Islam, which is not. So we have to be very careful. Similarly, I think let's say if you're a Muslim parent, you should not do what you call generalized statement. They say the Christians like that, the Buddhists like that. We have to be very careful, because what is happening in the so-called Islamization in schools, and the things that you all brought up is not Islamic. So I think we have to be careful. Just check. I think one of the best ways is to, the Muslims are not reading the Quran enough. And I think the non-Muslims in Malaysia should start picking up the Quran and read too, because they're making policies claiming it is Islam. And then you do not, you're too scared to question. I give you a simple example. Those who go for prayers for Zuhur, and lunch is 1 to 2, many will go for prayer at 2. And then they take extra 15 minutes, and then they come back, and no non-Muslim bosses, be so daring to question it. Even some Muslim bosses are too scared to question it. What they did is actually un-Islamic. They just use what you call, they use masa yang haram untuk sembahyang. So I think we have to be careful when we say Islamization. Please check. I don't think it is Islamization, what you stated just now. Thank you.
Thank you, Azima.
I think I won't speak about that. He says I don't wear tudung, so I better not. So anyway, I think that if you have concerns about the education system, I think you have to keep talking about it, keep writing about it, and don't give up, because we are definitely doing something about it, because it's important. That is the source of the quality of our human capital moving forward. So, if you have children, grandchildren in school, if you can try to engage teachers, principals, if you have problems, engage with them, give each other support. I think the bulk of the concerns as far as the English system is concerned can be resolved at school level. No need to take everything up to the minister. Thank you.
Yeah, so just a few parting words. I want to encourage all of us to, to begin to go home, and the environment is a huge subject matter. but try to bring it down to things that you can do and change quickly, low-hanging fruit, right? Turn off the lights when you're not in the room, turn off the air conditioning, the fans, try to carpool. The simple things that you hear so often but you're not doing, start doing them, okay? Because as consumers, the more and more we live unsustainable lives, the more and more forests have to be chopped, oceans have to be drained, oceans will be polluted because of plastics, microplastics. It's inevitable that the growing human population on the planet is going to start to overly consume if we lead unsustainable lifestyles. But if we all start living more sustainably, then that impact we have will be very, very much reduced. So do the simplest things that you always hear about, but you haven't taken action. Start with those first. Then we can have another forum on the bigger things. Thank you.
Yeah, just a reminder, one of the best things that happened in GE14 is the Malaysian people have collectively shown that they can change a government. So this government can be changed as well if the public is not very happy about whatever that's going on. I mean, if we just witness what happened in Sri Lanka, that the horrendous Rajapaksa has come back as the Prime Minister, this could very well happen. So we don't take things for granted. That is my main point. We make sure we find ways to collectively voice our concerns. And I think the church is the best place to do that. You can have a Watch Your MP program, or you can do various things, or work with your member of parliament to actually get some issues across. Now there's select committees in parliament. There's more ways to actually discuss issues of concern and all that. So I just think we need to remember that the power is with us, ordinary Malaysians, that we can decide the direction this country wants to take. So that is the purpose of this conversation, and I think YB Kasturi has done very well in answering so many pertinent questions. But the one thing I wanted to talk about is please watch how this government governs. Because already you can see Prime Minister, with all his important pronouncements and some good steps forward, also has both his sons winning open tender contracts. I mean, one open tender contract for Unified, the other one is Petron being named as the other company that all these government cars can go and pour petrol and stuff. How come? The Ministry for, what is that? Salahuddin Ayub's ministry, what is that? Yeah, he actually appointed members of his own party in Amanah to sit on some of the government departments, which are all very unhealthy practices, because you really need to show separation of powers, checks and balances and all that. And that's where we come in. We need to be a bit more vigilant, watch the news, find ways that we can check and balance. So watch your MP, work with your MP would be a very good way to start.
I don't know what is left to say after everything everyone else has said. I think I agree with Cynthia that for me to be able to function in the best way to represent the people, to be the voice of the people, is engagement. So I think, as what Cynthia has said, please reach out to your local elected reps. Please reach out to your ADUNs and your MPs and give them suggestions, give them ideas. Approach them as soon as possible when there's a problem. Approach your councillors. Empower yourself with knowledge and information so you will know where to go and who to ask and who to refer issues to. My mother also is sometimes not sure who to ask what and all that. So I can only assume and I can imagine what other senior citizens are also going through. I think suggestions and proposals, like what Auntie said, is very good for the senior citizen community in Malaysia, which is something that I think is serious, and it's at a stage where we really need to address how do we reach out to ensure that our senior citizens are more empowered, that they understand what's happening in the country, and that they can partake in decision making in the country. At the end of the day, as what Cynthia has said, it's Malaysians like y'all who have put us in a position to be able to get the Malaysian dream across and to make that a reality. And when that doesn't happen, it is also in your hands to remove us from this privileged position that I'm in because of the confidence and the trust of the Malaysian people. I urge all of y'all to speak without fear or favor. I urge all of y'all to consistently remind us that we are there to serve the public and we are servants of the public. You know, to say that you are a servant of God is not just enough. You must remind yourself that you are a servant of the public as well. I thank everyone for your support, unwavering support. I thank everyone for your constructive criticisms also, not just targeted to me or my party, but also to Pakatan Harapan. I will continue to be the voice of the marginalized, the minority, the oppressed, but I cannot do that if you all don't be the voices of the minorities, the oppressed and the marginalized as well. I'm always afraid that I only know what I know. I'm always afraid of things that I don't know. So please educate us, share information with us, issues with us, you know, and please also bear in mind that issues that you bring up and you raise, sometimes you speak for a society, sometimes you only speak for yourself. You know, that issues that are brought, that needs to be spoken and addressed will affect a plural society like the one in Malaysia. Again, I thank you all for your courage and your support from the 9th of May even until now. I apologize for all our shortcomings, hiccups along the way, but I assure you that you have good people with good heart and who want to bring about real change for Malaysians. It's just that sometimes we have teething problems, as you know. But thank you for your patience and thank you for your support again. Thank you.
And so with that, we thank the panelists and give them a big round of applause. And I hand you back over to our MC, Rachel.
We would once again like to thank our panelists for making the time to be here and for that insightful conversation on national unity, good governance, care for the environment and education. I think they deserve another round of applause. I would like to invite Father Gerard now to present tokens of appreciation to our guests.
Another lady, is it?
Yeah, for the lady.
I'm sure we all can agree it's been a fruitful...
Thank you, Father Gerard. And now, to show our pride in our country and commitment as Rakyat Malaysia, let us rise and sing our national anthem. With that, friends, our program for the evening has come to an end. Good night and God bless you.